So we're gonna have a little Q&A session.
How'd you do that?
I see that success is not something you pursue, it is something you are.
All right, so here are a few questions that I want to answer. The first question is, what should a speaker do if he or she has a monotone voice? Really, you should just practice. If you got a monotone voice, literally it's practice. That's what all public speaking is about. All presentation is about. Practice. All right, so the next question is, what are some games, exercises, techniques, etc. a speaker can use to get 100% full audience participation? There will never ever be 100% full audience participation unless it's a smaller crowd. The smaller the crowd is, the more likely you can get 100% full audience participation. Damn, that's like a tongue twister. The smaller the crowd is, the more likely you're going to get 100%, but the bigger crowd is, you'll never get 100%. But really, what you do is you literally get people involved with active demonstrations. And this is why I talk about the interaction in my presentation. You can't do the things like everyone raise your hands and do that, because everybody's doing that. All the speakers are doing that. So you have to think in terms of literal demonstrations, and those kind of demonstrations really depend on your presentation as well. But really, no one will ever get 100% full audience participation. So the next question is, what are your thoughts on the role of music in a speaking gig? I use music and saw Tony Robbins use it, and I do for a couple of parts, but most speakers seem not to use it. I love music. Music is great. It gets people's energies up. Energy up. So music is great. The problem or the reason why a lot of speakers may not use it is because you got to pay for the rights to use the music unless you want to get sued. So Tony Robbins uses it, and he uses it great because his presentations are like freaking rock concerts. So a speaker who wants to think about energy, great, you can use it. But then you got to go through all the legal stuff. You can, of course, take a chance. You can be like, hey, I highly doubt they're going to sue me because I'm a small-time guy. But of course, if you want to use music to increase energy, I love it. I'll dance the night away as long as it's good music and not that crappy house music. So the next question is, what are some creative, i.e. not just using a projector, ideas to make a speech more visual? This is, once again, to the last answer, a couple answers ago, where I said it's all about interaction, and I think in terms of interaction. So to make something more visual, what I do is I think of a physical metaphor. So what I told a friend one time, where he was coming out and his presentation was about how he made $100,000 in 6 months or so, or 90 days or whatever. And I told him to take that and use a physical metaphor, to walk out in the room with a suitcase. He walks out quiet, he walks with a suitcase, he opens it up, and there's just cash in there. He just dumps it on the ground. And people are going to pay attention. It's a very visual thing. So when I think in terms of visual, I don't think in terms of projectors. Usually speakers who use projectors, they're using it because they lack the presentation ability to keep someone's attention without that projector. So think in terms of physical metaphors, and this comes down to your presentation specifically. Just like my friend where I said, hey, take real money and freaking dump that on the ground, people are going to pay attention. That's what you want to think about in terms of making your presentation visual. Just think in terms of engagement. Engagement is a mental thing, not something outside. It's literally mental. So the next question is, you said not to go out of character in a video and not to force it. You said you're not a funny guy and showed a clip at Aflac of you being funny by not trying to be funny. Theater instructors say this too, but how do you discover your natural character and know what your character is? Can't a natural personality be unpredictable and totally different depending on the mood, or change after a certain turning point in life? Well, there's so many questions in this one. To find your natural character, it comes down, there's essentially two things that you can do. One, you essentially don't give a hoot. You literally don't care what you look like in front of people, and your natural character will just naturally come out. That's what I do in these videos. I'm like, I don't care if people like me. If I say pimp slap, someone doesn't like me, I'll just pimp slap, and I don't care. So In fact, that's funny because when I sent an email out and I said in the email I was born at a young age, someone responded and say, hey, that's unprofessional. And I said, well, get off the list. So it comes down to you not caring. When you literally don't care, your natural personality just comes out. Then the second part is you combine that with a character. If you see me in person, I'm very quiet, and the reason I'm very quiet is because I prefer to listen to people and learn a lot from them, because I already know what I know. I don't need to talk to people and tell them what I know. I already know what I know. So I'm very quiet because I prefer to listen to somebody. So I think in terms of when I'm on stage and when I'm presenting in a video like this, you have to think in terms of engagement. If I was quiet in this video, if I just said, hey, in order to present, I mean, nobody would pay attention. So you got to think in terms of your character as being not a better version, but being a more active version, being a more a bigger version of what you're trying to represent. And you can think in terms of a literal character, like I'm literally going to create a funny guy or a nerd or a smart, a wise person, and how would this wise person act on stage, and he would have slow movements and he would do gestures like this, and so you could create a literal character like that. But you always want to think when you're on stage and you're presenting a character, you got to be larger than life. So that's how I think in terms of character. Of course, your mood can change, but when you're on stage, it just comes down to you being engaging, you thinking in terms of, all right, when I'm on stage, I'm bigger than life. I'm larger than life. And when you're in a video, you're just like, I don't care. If I say pimp slap, someone gets offended, who cares? All right, so the next question is, are there any actionable steps a speaker can take to smile good on stage? In some cases, it can be much harder to smile naturally under pressure. When I smile on stage, or just smile in general a lot of the time before I get on stage, here's something that I do all the time. Let's say that I see Will Smith in the audience, and I know I need to smile before I get on stage. What I say in my head, I'll literally say this in my head, damn, he's got some big ass ears. And then I'll walk on stage because I just made a joke to myself, and I'll just be like, and that's what I literally make a joke about someone in the audience or something. I'll remember something funny, and that'll happen inside of my head. And then a big smile would just happen on my face. And that's just a little trick that I've used to just get a smile on my face. So next question is, how does age affect the likelihood of being booked? If someone 13 tries to build an image to book a $10,000 speaking gig, he or she will face an uphill battle due to not being taken seriously. Or will he face an uphill battle due to not being taken seriously? If someone 60 tries to build an image to book a $10,000 speaking gig, will people prefer a younger guy? What exactly does the age spectrum look like? Really, this comes down to a combination of just how you think, what's going on inside of your head, and a little bit of the audience's perspective. Look up a guy named Farrar Gray. He's a black dude. And when he was, I believe, 15, that was when he made his first million or so. It was like 15, some ridiculously young. And he was on stage and he was speaking to people about, hey, here's how I made millions. When people see this, they're like, oh, a 15-year-old talking about how to make millions? To them, they're like, that doesn't make sense. Why should I listen to this dude? But he knew, he's like, I made freaking $1 million. I'm freaking million. I'm 15 years old. So he came with this state of mind of, I've got something to offer them. So yes, your age kind of, it's like people will kind of say, oh, he's 13 years old. I don't know if he should be on stage. But if you take that into account with your state of mind, like number one, I got something to offer them. Number two, if you also understand their perspective, if I'm 13 years old and I say, okay, I can't teach people how to be a multi-millionaire yet, but I can make a funny presentation on here's what a 13-year-old would do if he were a multi-millionaire. Here's what a 13-year-old would do to make millions, or whatever the content is. You think from the standpoint of more like an entertainer. There's this one entertainer out there, this magician actually, freaking hilarious. He was, I don't know, maybe 20 years old, 21 years old. He came out there looking like a nerd, and just like a straight nerd, just the pocket protector and glasses, all this stuff. And he played into that character as a nerd, and the audience loved him. That's what I would do if I was young, or if you're older, that doesn't really matter. If you're older, if you're 60 years old, and you're talking to high school students, then the high school students are going to be like, oh, what does he have to offer me? He's freaking old and he's about to die. So the high school students might say things like that, but it just comes down to you connecting with them through your presentation by thinking from where they are and saying, look, I used to be just like you guys. I mean, we didn't have Snapchat during the days, we weren't sexting, but we were thinking about that stuff. So maybe you probably don't want to use that, but you want to essentially think from where they are mentally and then bring them up to where you are mentally. So that's what I would do if I was older. But really, when it comes down to age, it's really just your state of mind. So the last question is, what is the story behind speaking agents? Are they generally speakers themselves first and failed? Or did they get so successful, the referrals were massive and they decided to do something with them? Are they usually sales employees first for companies that have nothing to do with entertainment? What's the story? Really, that's almost like asking, what's the story behind speakers? Everyone has their own stories. I mean, you never know. It's a speaker that failed and now they want to do the booking stuff. Personally, a lot of speakers ask about agents because they just don't want to book anything themselves. They're just too lazy to do the prospecting. So they're like, let me find an agent who will do everything for me and the gigs just come in. So you don't even want to think about that. Even if an agent failed, let's say they were a speaker and they failed and now they're just doing the booking speakers route or whatever, then are they good at it? That's the only thing that you need to think about is, are they good at it? I can care less if someone failed. I don't care if someone never done it. If they never did it before. I can care less if they're 10 years old. If they're good at this job, if they're good at the thing that I'm hiring them for, that's what I want to know. So it doesn't really matter what someone's background is. All I really care about is what can they do.